Hello, hello. So the title says Thursday, August 13th, 2026. Today is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. So why does it say Thursday? Um, because I could have sworn that Thursday was going to be the 14th. I had received notification that I was going to be receiving blinds for my room that I call the cathedral room, and I could have sworn the correspondence said you'll be receiving them August 14th, which would have been a Thursday. Now I should know August 6th was definitely a Thursday. So I had an AC installed, and this was kind of a weird situation as well. I've Over the past few years, I've had multiple people quote me for mini split systems for my home for air conditioning. And I had one person quote me at 9,700 for a mini split for the first floor, and I found that to be an astronomical price. Um, Last year, I reached out to somebody and they quoted me for 6,700 for a Mitsubishi unit. I believe it was 18,000 BTUs, but it also had like a $2,000 rebate. So that was the year. Um, it's tough for me to justify such an expense where I want to leave America. I'm applying for Italian citizenship and whatnot. But this year, um, I decided to go through with air conditioning, and I got a Daikin mini split system, which I am told is the number one mini split air conditioning company in the world. Not that they're the best. I've heard from multiple vendors that the Mitsubishi unit is the best, but this is like the most units sold, I guess. Like it's the number one in sales. And part of that reason is I believe to be is it's supposed to be reliable, where I'm going to compare it to auto mechanics liking Toyotas. So there's things on YouTube where they go up to auto mechanics, what's your favorite car to buy? And they say Toyotas because they're easy to maintain. It's easy to change the air filter, it's easy to order parts and whatnot. And they might say, like, we hate Audis or something. Audis have, some convoluted system to change the air filters. So I was going to compare it to that because it seemed to be like part of their sales pitch. I had this company come out, A1 Air Conditioning. They said that they use Daikin. And when I researched it, I felt like this was a pitch where the reason why they prefer this brand, it's easy to repair and whatnot. And when looking up the website, when looking up Daikin, I came across information that the units have cloud-based diagnostics. So if there's something wrong with the unit, um, it could tell you over the internet. Like, let's say the air filter needed changing. I guess there's some app that sends information to Daikin or somebody, and they say you need to repair your unit. And that's significant because my parents have central air, and sometimes it's not working properly. So I know they've troubleshooted a lot with those units. I I don't know if Central Air has more, newer releases of Central Air have this technology, but this played into the decision making process. And so anyway, I called Daikin and they wanted a deposit. I called A1. They wanted a deposit, so we gave them a deposit, and they told me that everything was scheduled for the 6th. And like I didn't schedule that. So I called my father. I said, "Did you speak to A1? Did you schedule something um for the 6th?" And he said no. So they kind of did this on their own. So I know that was a Thursday, and because it's remarkable because my father, he's off on Wednesday, so sometimes I have my father on Wednesday, and he came over today, or he might come over on Saturday and Sunday. So they came out and they installed this unit on Thursday the 6th. They were done with it on Thursday the 6th. I received an email that said they're coming out on the 10th. I said, oh, I was kind of hoping they could finish it in a day. They left and they said, it's done. And so they left, and I went to the unit and I said, gee, I don't feel like cold air. So I called them up and you know, turn it off, wait 5 minutes, turn it back on, see if anything changes. I did that, and then I called them back, and they sent out a technician. Technician fixed it, and the air conditioner was working, and it was great. But then it randomly shut off on Friday, and they sent another technician out, and he goes into the yard and he's working on the outside unit, and he's on the phone with technical support or something for what seemed like a few hours, and I guess it's needs a new control board or something. It's a brand new unit, and so this didn't really align with what I had been led to believe. That first of all, it seemed like troubleshooting this thing was kind of cumbersome, where he was on the phone for a while. They didn't know what was wrong, and then when they tried to order the part, so they get on the phone with me and they say, we're on the phone with Daikin. We're trying to get that part for you. We'll call you when it's available. Well, they it's now Wednesday the 12th. I received an email today and they said we're going to hear back tomorrow. That doesn't mean they're getting the part in tomorrow. That means they're going to hear back from the manufacturer if that part has come in. I'm like, you can't get an overnight part for a unit. A customer needs a part and you can't have that expedited. This is a brand new unit, so it seems like the troubleshooting thing, it doesn't seem to have the infrared. So there's like a Samsung bespoke, and there's also Mitsubishi units. I was kind of sold on the Mitsubishi, whereas infrared, and I guess it can direct the air where it blows at you. The all the technicians that came in, I asked them, I'm like, do they have this infrared thing? Apparently Daikin does have one of these things, but it's not on this unit. And I asked them, does it have infrared tracking? They're like, yeah, the fins move and stuff. Well, apparently, like on a Mitsubishi unit, it can track you in the room. And originally I was kind of turned off to this because that can give, let's say somebody gets access to your Mitsubishi infrared, they can see where you are in the room. And I I don't even like having my Roomba because, that can map a room and stuff. And but then I thought this might be beneficial because it can either, I guess, blow air directly at you, or it could divert air away. So it can track you in the room. Like if you don't want air blowing directly on you, it can sense that and it can blow in a different direction. And I guess that's left to right rather than just up and down. And or it could blow air directly on you. So when I asked about this feature, it seemed like the technicians and stuff didn't really know much about that product or that feature. But let's see what happened after that. So I've had several people come in. I had people come in here to measure the floors. I had people come in to paint the room. And I just had some touch-ups here. So there's the Daikin unit. Tomorrow I'm getting the blinds so I can get rid of these temporary ones. And they finished this white molding over here. So they forgot to paint this. And like, I think those lines are clean. Like this molding came out very well. But like over here, I don't know if you can see it from here, the moldings are kind of uneven. And like what I kind of expected, like why didn't they take the moldings off the wall and then paint them while they're off the wall and then put them back on? So there's like some unevenness in the, I don't know if you can see it a little bit, like right here. I wanted this room to be pristine. I had spoken to the guy who painted the room, and he was telling me, like, you know, there are different types of paint, and some of the paints can mask the imperfections in the wall. I expressed to him, I said, you know, like, I want the prep work to be like, no matter what paint I have on here, there's no imperfection. So I kind of wanted like a matte color. Actually, what I originally wanted, I have a Secret Lab desk here, and I have this silver suede. It's gonna go right into my crotch. Apple, you gotta do something with this gimbal. Like, just have a stationary camera. If I want things all over the place, I'll buy a separate webcam. Like, this is kind of like irritating with how it tracks and stuff. Because I really don't have any control over it. And so I have the Silver Suede Magnus Pro Secret Lab desk, and I wanted to color match the desk to the walls, and I wanted it to kind of like mimic the suede material, where there be peaks of, this kind of looks like a green screen, where there be peaks of, you know, lighter and darker shades of gray. So it would kind of, you know, give the illusion that the walls were also suede. But I was told by Sherwin-Williams that they couldn't color match this desk because it was suede, and it would just throw black like into their machine. So I said, okay. I ordered a color called Bedrock, and because I was trying to find something that closely resembled the desk here. And then I said, you know what, I kind of want to color match. So I can't find my Asus mouse. Here it is, right here. So I decided to, and you can kind of see, like, so this wall is color matched to this mouse, and what do you think? I have, like, on the swatch looks color matched to this. This is, you know, I've always liked Asus. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I used to pronounce it Asus. I got this keyboard. I love this keyboard. The thing is, like, the keyboard, a lot of people who are like really into like building their own computers and stuff, there's this place called Drop, I guess, and there's something, a default keyboard, where people start building their own keyboards. They get like different types of keys, cherry blues, cherry reds and stuff. And they got, you know, different profiles and stuff. I really like the smaller keyboards, and so I guess this is called a 65%, so it doesn't have the numpad and whatnot. And so I'm probably in the, I don't know if I'm in the minority now, but like I don't want to build my own keyboard. I'll build a computer. I'm probably not going to build a computer now though, because I don't, if anything goes wrong with it, if there's like a part that needs to be armade or something, I don't want, you know, people to say, well, you're just clumsy. Like, you're, you know, clearly your technique or whatever is responsible for that part failing. I rather buy something from brick and mortar, or not brick and mortar, from a company that builds computers, and have the liability fall on them. If there's any defect, I have a warranty, and if there's any issue with the computer, I can just say, you know, it was on their end. So the issue with this keyboard, though, these keys are so soft. I mean, it's great to touch. Like, this is, but like, you could just be resting your hand, and very lightly it will apply enough pressure to activate a key. So looks like there might be blood on one of the keys. I'm trying to get that off. But there was a computer that I built circa 2009, and there's this old thing, can it run Crysis? So can I run Crysis at 60 frames per second? So this computer, that was kind of the goal, but I wanted an iFinity triple monitor setup. And so I had dual ATI 5080s, and the problem was you needed DisplayPort things, like mini DisplayPort or something, to run the iFinity setup. And I couldn't, those were kind of pricey at the time. And so eventually the build morphed into, I had an AMD Opteron. So originally I had an AMD Athlon 64-bit chip. Then I moved to an AMD Opteron. It's actually a server chip. So this is the 939 socket, and I upgraded to SSDs. And SSDs is Intel proprietary technology. And in order to run the SSDs in RAID 0, I needed an Intel-based motherboard. And so I just mentioned some upgrades on a AMD board where I had an Athlon chip, two 939 socket chips, and for like Intel, every chip generation is a new motherboard. So you're not, if you're like, hey, I want to upgrade my chip, you're buying a new motherboard as well. Uh, so I purchased, I wound up switching to Intel so I could run the SSDs in RAID 0, and I switched those 5080s into a NVIDIA 670, which could run NVIDIA Surround, 3 monitors on one graphics card, and it was less power. And but I went through like several, at least two or three motherboards before getting an X58 Sabertooth from Asus, and that was the motherboard that worked. Um, I think it was a Galaxy graphics card though, but like typically when I buy graphics cards, I have biases towards like Power Color, which is like an ATI brand, but for like Gigabyte, Asus, MSI, those might be some brands that I feel like Nvidia has better third-party branding than ATI. If I decide to get a Radeon on a new computer, it might be Asus, or it might be the XFX, because they're white and they're priced around the same thing. But I'm probably going to go with a 5080, and it's probably going to be Asus. The whole computer is probably just going to be Asus.
What do you need a 5080 for?
I find the dilemma right now. It's like that's the current gen of graphics cards, and when like I w- I wouldn't like I'd rather have a old i7 than a current i3, and I don't know what Intel's branding is for their current CPU generation, but like let's say where you like the like I feel like a 5060 on a new gen would probably be like I have a 2080. I'm like I probably just have the 2080 or something. I don't know. I'm not building the computer anyway. I feel like I'm kind of at the mercy of the market right now. So like a computer, a top end computer, back in the day where I built this iFinity thing would be 1,500 to 2,000 if I built it. Right now, me pricing out a computer is like 5,000, and it's not even like it's not a top end chip. Like the Ryzen 9, blah blah blah. That's the top one. So this is kind of like when I was looking at the Intel, when I was building that X58 setup, there was the i9, there was the 990, and there was the 970. Those are the two cream of the crop. And a lot of people got the 920s. I got a 930 because I didn't want to overclock. I actually underclocked. People would overclock the 920s to be like 4 gigahertz and stuff. And but that was that's not the top tier, but it's an i7, and so I feel like this where I'm in the market now, I'm looking at Ryzen 7s that are maybe a year or two old. They're still good, but they're not the cream of the crop. They're not the Ryzen 9 9950X 3D 2 or whatever. And then the graphics card, I'm not looking at a 5090. Even if I'm looking at like a 9070 for the Radeon, for the 9070 XT or something, that's still like $700. That's like the cost of what a top end GPU would be back in the day. the 1080 that I have currently. So I got my current desktop from brick and mortar, and it was more economical to buy off the shelf because this computer was about 1,500. The 1080 by itself would be about 1,000. The CPU would probably be like 400. So that's 1,400 for those two components alone. Then you have the RAM, the hard drives, the power supply, the case, and the motherboard. So with all that, I'm sure it'd be, approaching or more than 2,000. And here it's like, no matter what you do, there are people who build computers like Origin PC, Main Gear I've looked at, and that price it cheaper than what I could build it for. Like I've checked out PC Part Picker and put in various components, and if I go to Newegg, I don't know if Tiger Direct still exists, but Amazon, and I'm assuming they, pull from Best Buy and Micro Center and whatnot. When I'm pricing it, I was like $5,000. So the same setup is like 3,100 elsewhere. So I might go with them. The only thing is, I don't like the aesthetics, and that is something, it's not trivial. It's something that matters because part of the thing is I want something that's going to mask wires and it's not going to trigger arachnophobia. I want something that's white, and so in addition to upgrading, I need more RAM. Um, I want Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and USB-C. So in addition to those upgrades, I also want white cables and whatnot. So what's today's date? Today's the 12th. And yes, this is the one that's 3,100. So this is a white computer, and it's got the Ryzen 7 9800 X3D and the 5080. I would upgrade the RAM, so I want 64 gigs at least, but everything else is fine. So, and it's priced at $31.99, and that that seems to be a good deal, because if I go to price a computer out right now, um,
AMD, gamers first. We're going to buy Neuron now. And I'll show you the one. So I don't really love how open this case is, like having the acrylic all around and this little thing at the bottom. So if we were to price out the same CPU, and then we're going to price out, can we get 64 gigs? Because last time I checked, I couldn't even, I can do 96. But they have a deal. I think it's 900. It's $1,300 off if I go with the top end chip here. So that's this one, and then the graphics card is the Radeon. That's $34.64. All right, now I might be well. if we throw in the 50/80, that brings up to 3914. And even if I were to drop down that it's 3581. And how much RAM do we have in? That's with 32 gigs of RAM. But I can't have 96 with this configuration. So I had a investigation open with the Department of Education over my situation at Seton Hall. So here's my little diploma. It says the Seton Hall School of Law, and then it says Matthew Joya, and it says Health and Hospital Law, and it says that this was completed on the 25th day of August of 2022. So that's why I was at Saybrook, and I was dismissed from Saybrook. I completed 51 credits at Saybrook, and after I was dismissed from them, I reached out to Seton Hall to see if I can enroll in their program, and I disclosed to them during the interview. I said I was dismissed from Saybrook, and but I felt the punishment was unduly severe. Seton Hall accepted me into their program. I started in the fall of 2025. I was enrolled in the fall 2025, the spring of 2024, my mistake. So I enrolled in the fall of 2024, then I was also enrolled in the spring of 2025, and I was enrolled in the summer of 2025. And they dismissed me during the summer of 2025. And I don't know why, but I had chosen their program because there were still things that I wanted to study. So they have pharmaceutical law, they have gaming and hospitality law, they have the counseling degree, and if I ever wanted to, I studied chemistry during my undergrad. I might want to, brush up on chemistry. Like if I had an opportunity to take more chemistry coursework, but that would be like, down the road where I've maybe just kind of for leisure, just for some enjoyment. So they dismissed me despite my GPA being like a 4.0, and well, one course they gave me an A minus in, and oh boy. I'm wondering, she took points off on one of my papers because I didn't apply countertransference towards the client, and that wasn't part of the counseling theory that I was using. And she also referred to my client as Alan, and that wasn't the client I was, using anyway. So after I was dismissed under some vague allegation of sexual misconduct, I reached out to the Title IX office within the school, the Title IX office at NYU and Rutgers, to see if they can investigate another school. And I sent a letter to the OCR in around December of 2025. And anyway, while I was in prison, I wrote this thing to the Attorney General of the state of New York, and I treated this thing like it's my baby. I loved my handwriting.
You know, it's been a while since I've handwritten a lot of things. Like, I um, I had quite a fondness for there are some things, you know, I regret how I phrased some things, but I was always asking to go down to the law library, copy things, and I was always writing and reading. And part of these things, part of what I was writing were um, things to maintain a sense of self, um, to kind of keep me motivated, like, you know, something to look forward to. Of course, I wanted to get back to Shelby, and I was reading. I had with me Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and you know he was saying, you know, like the people on the outside, the wives and the children, you know, these are things to keep you motivated and stuff. I actually found early on I didn't want to think of Shelby because it would make my sentence seem so much longer because I I love her more than anyone, and like I wanted to get back to her. I wanted to just shower her with affection and let her know how much I love her. And by thinking about her early on, it just, you know, I couldn't wait. And you know, it's like it would be like, you know, looking at the clock and be like, oh, that's how much. Like I would have been more aware of the time, and for me to kind of make the time go by, I would walk around, I would write, I would read, and I had a certain routine to just kind of, you know, to combat the boredom or whatever. I would always have my picture of Shelby when I watched like television and stuff, and but I was very fond of this letter I wrote. There were some things I wish I could have done differently, and I expressed that in a letter, in an email, when I sent this package of letters to NYU, who has a PhD in health policy. And I said, you know, like, I regret putting, I had some commentary on this. And I was kind of in the mindset where I kind of wanted to treat this as some sort of capstone project, some sort of dissertation by itself. Could I possibly just talk my way into getting, like, I want to get a PhD based on merit, and there should be no reason why I shouldn't be able to get that. I completed half a PhD at Saybrook. My academics weren't being called into question. You know, I was doing well in the coursework. I just, you know, sent an email that, you know, pissed off a person, and you know, I was telling my father earlier, you know, like I have PTSD, like, or maybe I was telling somebody else, like I sleep, and I might have a night terror, or I might have PTSD, and my outlet, my weapon was Twitter. My weapon was an email. I might type something to alleviate the stress or something, and you know, typically, you know, typically what I might write for on Twitter is like, on December 27th, 2020, I was assaulted by the police. They then took me to a nearby hospital, not to have my injuries treated or assessed, but rather to be detained without due process. It was false imprisonment. And they accomplished this by lying to staff and telling them that I attempted to fight 4 to 6 of them. And that's not true. And so I would write this message over and over and over, and I would direct it towards different agencies, the president, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, um, Letitia James, and advocacy agencies such as Amnesty International and whatnot. And I still have if I have my iPad, I'll show you my account. I'm just going to grab my food.
I'm going to quickly show this. So this is my iPad, and I have on here X. So open up X, and it says your account is suspended. But this account was verified. And if I go to my home, this was a broadcast where that first one is a message somebody left on my parents' answering machine where they said, it kind of sounds like Elon Musk. Your son is, I still have it. You know what? Let me just play it. What the hell is it? Shouldn't be that hard to find, like I labeled it.
Message 2. Hi. Your son Matthew is streaming child porn on Twitter Live right now, and I believe he has hurt his dog. Thank you. Bye.
Thursday, 9:12 p.m. End of messages.
So there's that. And so that's the first thing. And then, I don't know if I can do this where it's like iPhone mirroring. But I still have this account, and a lot of the things are just, you know, advocacy for myself. So here's one where I'm requesting criminal charges. I request criminal charges be placed against the sheriffs involved in the March 2024 incident. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm just gonna, I got some prosciutto. Wegmans is a supermarket that stays open, so I'm attempting keto, and again, and I got mozzarella, I got prosciutto, and I got roast beef, and then I got Shelby's of her. I got Shelby her fresh pet. It's the 18 or 24 months. 24 months. So, I'll show you the email that I addressed to NYU. Little girl, from the day you were born, the very voice of Laura whispered the name, Shelby. So here is prospective student for PhD in health policy, and this was sent January 25th, 2026 at 4:46 a.m. Then I have here, so this Kathleen Ryder was the attorney assigned my case at the U.S. Department of Education, the Office for Civil Rights, and so I guess I wanted to know, did she outsource my complaint to Reddit? And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So the next thing I'll show you is the handwritten letter. So this is the handwritten letter that I wrote from prison, and you can see that it is notarized on the 12th day of November 2025, and I have references to narrative therapy. Among the postmodern approaches to counseling is a counseling theory called among the postmodern approaches to counseling is a counseling theory called narrative therapy. One technique of narrative therapy is something called therapeutic documents. This technique can serve to reinforce an individual's new narrative. In my counseling theories course, I posited that code is law and congruence between a person's real and ideal self is achieved when the narrative, as perceived by others, aligns with your genuine self. I am hoping to use law to validate my narrative in that I was the victim and not the aggressor, that I am suffering, and that I am well-intentioned. And I cite Sapolsky
and I got this. So like I'm reading in prison. I'm reading Sapolsky. I'm citing texts that I read, Navid et al., Murdoch, and Flynn and Castleberry, and I don't have access to these things. Except there was something I called my father. Navid et al. I had a dialogue or I sent the attorney James a correspondence, something before I was incarcerated, and I mentioned personality disorders, and I just wanted clarification on. I wanted to make sure that I was properly citing something, so I called him, and he actually rented the textbook from Pearson Plus, and he told me what information I wanted, but everything else here was pulled from memory. There was something called Westgate Law that I had access to. It didn't seem to have in the matter of DH, which was a case that I reference here. The AP article also affords me to use another favorite quote of mine in the matter of DH. In regards to terminating life support for a young boy D, the court stated that they will not determine if it is a life worth living from any other perspective other than D's. I often use this quote in my psychology papers when discussing trying to see the world through the lens of the client. And I had asked one of my law school professors, this is actually incorrect, it wasn't Professor Slater. Professor Slater, Angela Slater, taught me HIPAA privacy in law, and Megan Scanlon taught me the law of patient care. It was actually this guy, John, who taught me children's health in the law, because that's, I guess, where I came across this article, and that would have been 2022. And but I asked if the language in the matter of DH could be used to justify assisted suicide. I had a dialogue with all my professors, so but I asked if that this could be used to justify assisted suicide, and this was notarized on the 25th day of November 2025. So I hand wrote this thing, and you can see that it's 102 pages. Now some of these are blank because it's like double-sided. It's 102 pages. It's probably about 70 pages. Like I have inventories where I sent different packets to different agencies, so I had to keep counting up, how many letters, how many pages and sheets of paper I sent, and that was also relevant to the cost of postage. And but I hand wrote this thing. I emailed it to the Wagner NYU, the school, the PhD in health policy, and then later I saw something. It was brought to my attention that someone had posted on Reddit that they were dismissed from school after they hand wrote a thesis. And it seems similar to my experience, except the person was being accused of using AI to write the paper. And it was a private school, $45,000 in tuition. That's about the cost of my program. Seton Hall's private. It was for their undergrad, and they said it was a scholarship. And I was wondering if this was, could this be the lawyer getting some feedback from the internet? How should I pursue this case? So let me, I don't know if this, let's see if this thing is still open. Vader TARDIS, user on Reddit. So let me go to Safari here. Here's the case. My university is revoking my $45,000 scholarship over a false AI detector match, refusing to look at my Google Docs edit history. Now that code is law thing. So I received something from the OCR in an email that said, we're not going to investigate your case because it's been past 180 days. I thought that that would trigger. So if I go to my email here, and if I go to HHS, here's the thing where it says we're not going to look into your case because it's 180 days past the deadline. And I thought that that was going to trigger. This email came June 12th, that was going to trigger the end of my OCR investigation against Seton Hall. When I sent this to Kathleen Ryder today, my case was dropped. So let me go back to mail. This was sent today at 15:07, and then about an hour and 50 minutes later, or not even, let's see. So at 15:56, so not even an hour later, I get this message. I'm writing to inform you that the OCR is dismissing your complaint. So that's the power of code is law type thing where I mentioned in an email, well, this will justify the 180-day thing. Well, that's the reason why they dismissed the case. It was past 180 days. I'm not happy with that. I have a website where I have documented. It shouldn't say dismissal letter. This actually wasn't the dismissal letter. Actually, it says on July 14, 2025, I was dismissed. So this is the letter that came to me in June 16th or something. I have it states that my status in the program is at risk for possible violations to the code for the university's policy against sexual misconduct. And then I have down here an interactive transcript where you click on, it says, a pattern of inappropriate, unwelcome communications between yourself, learning team members, and you click learning team members. And it shows the only communication I have with the learning team members, which is a group chat that we had as part of the counseling skills course in the fall of 2024. But what I don't have is the actual dismissal letter. So let me bring that one up. So let me go through my emails. I delayed downloading that one. So I received it on the 14th. of July, but they immediately shut down my email account. My mistake. I'm looking at June. That's why I can't find it. So this is the letter that was on July 14th. In view of the gravity of the concerns, you were advised in my June 16th letter that your continuation in the program was at risk, and you were advised to carefully consider your progress in the program, your professional goals, and your willingness and anticipated ability to demonstrate fieldwork readiness as required by this training program's coursework and clinical experiences, as well as the profession which provides you with an opportunity to respond to these concerns. Accordingly, further evaluation with respect to your status in the program was necessary. As part of that academic review process, you were required to attend a meeting via video conference with the college's academic standing committee on June 25th, 2025, so that you could respond to these concerns. You attended the meeting, and the committee thoughtfully evaluated your responses to committee's questions. I will state right now, so I was humble and I stood by my genuine self in my meeting with Saybrook's committee. I was almost at the point of tears in that conversation, and there's a moment where I'm getting teary-eyed, and they're like, "Joya, is that all you said or something?" Like, I found it, astonishing that these individuals who preach humanistic psychology were oblivious to the emotional experience that I was the emotions I was displaying at that time. And for the Seton Hall committee, I was just annoyed. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day. Like, I was irritated that I had to even attend this thing. I felt that, where Saybrook might have some merit in their concerns, where, something was said that was inappropriate, Seton Hall had absolutely no fucking business in dismissing me or bringing me in front of a committee. Seton Hall had no fucking business calling into question my status in the program. My work was exceptional. It was on par or better than my peers in many regards. There were sometimes I looked at, the whole point of discussion questions are to identify gaps in our awareness, right? And to inform one another. That's why we have differential diagnosis, so we can learn from one another. And I felt my classroom experience was a positive one. There were no ad hominem attacks. It was a positive learning environment. My emails, my communications, there was nothing that indicated there was no sexually inappropriate messages. I was concerned about my pending incarceration, and I was in spiritual crisis, but even then, I don't think anything was said. There was nothing said that should warrant dismissal from the program. When I contacted the ACA, They told me they don't go onto an academic level. You know, if you're challenging, this was a academic committee. This wasn't a professional committee. So calling into question the ACA code of ethics, and there was a was it was you know it didn't fit the scope of why they called my status in the program into question. Citing ACA ethics, it's not relevant to what had been addressed, and I felt like there was a moment where I had mentioned, I said, I snapped back at one person. I said, "You mentioned sexual harassment again, and like, there'll be problems," type thing. But then there was also something where I addressed someone who was making allegations against me for sexual harassment or something, and Brian Crable says, "You know who gets to make that call, right? You know who gets to make that judgment." And I don't know if this was referencing prior to the course starting. I had to do a little course on sexual harassment and like reporting standards and where people should go in the event of sexual misconduct and what constitutes, rape and all this stuff. And I signed it and I finished it and I did this thing. Or is he saying, well, it's up to them. Like if they say that you're doing something, then you are. Like, but that's the thing. It's nobody came forward and said these things. So to label me in such a way is upsetting to me. And I fired back after this, and I basically accused the dean. I did accuse the dean. I accused Brian Crable of sexual harassment by using sexual misconduct as a vehicle for my dismissal. As far as the inability to incorporate feedback from professors, I still have to add that to the website. What feedback? Oh, you didn't put the page number when you APA cited here. Okay, so going forward I put the page number. You used the wrong end. When you put Newman and Newman, when it's in the text you can use end, but when it's in the citation you use the little, oh, that was an oversight. Okay, going forward I'll make sure I have the right end to my citation. But feedback, incorporate what feedback? My grades are hundreds. 10 out of 10s. Anything that they said to improve, I did. Oh, you still weren't concise in your if you have a problem with my pre-unit reflection questions, I reflected on these things and I put a great deal of thought into it. And if you don't like that I expressed I'll post them. They're supposed to be pass-fail anyway. And just for further reference, I got 100 on the assignment at the end. That's basically, aggregating all those per-unit reflection questions. So, and I find this thing about vulnerable populations, I'm the vulnerable population. If they fail to see that, again, you have no business being in the counseling profession. Who let these individuals slip through the cracks? Who licensed these people who are judging me? So I feel, based on these two letters, they failed to substantiate anything regarding sexual misconduct. They failed to substantiate. If you're going to say, well, you said the word disrobe in an email, okay, who cares? Patients might have to disrobe. Patients undergo physical examinations. You might have someone come in and be like, let's say, who took care of those girls
from the Larry Nassar situation. Can you imagine handling that situation with Brian Crable's definition of a counselor? Hi, I was you were violate. Don't tell me about pulling down your pants and shit. Like, that's inappropriate. Tell me I can't handle vulnerable populations? What Seton Hall counselor could handle the Larry Nassar situation? Inclusion of adult film actors? Holy shit. Wait a minute. Inclusion of adult film actors. I reread this email. What are you referencing? Reference inclusion of adult film actors. Here's the email. We got pages here. You read it. Hi, Professor Valise. Since I spent some time working on these, I thought I might share them with you. So I had mentioned to her that I had adapted a story from my life experiences around this time of development. This is human development. So criticism of me early on was, you haven't shared with us any negative experiences. I was upper middle class, white privileged. I had friends. I grew up in a Catholic home where I went to nursery and pre-K at St. Lawrence, and then I went to St. Mary's School in East Islip, and I was a popular student. I did well. I had, I had demonstrated academic excellence. I had plenty of friends who I hung out with one-on-one, friends that I would hang out in groups. We would play organized sports. We'd play football and basketball. And I was invited to parties. People came over my home for pool parties and stuff. And in high school, I had a friend who we were like joined at the hip. We would go to concerts, ball games, movies. We would go to diners and stuff. We would play billiards, bowling, mini golf, driving range. And we would go up to Hilburn, New York, and go to Mount Fuji and stuff. I was awarded grants and scholarships to go to school. I was tutoring math. I was volunteering. I had strong familial ties. I loved my family. I wanted children. Everything was looking positive. Then I get to school. My grandfather's health is in the decline. Now things start turning up bad for me. So that's when I wrote about it. And I told the person who criticized me this, I said, I thought that this was perhaps to see how we have evolved over time, so how we have developed. You have to see the whole picture. So anyway, I controlled F this. There's not one mention of the word porn in this email. Ironically, this story that I was developing, I often refer to as one that is grounded in reality. It's a love story. It's a Romeo and Juliet love story about two individuals, Matt Joya, Amy McFadden. They meet at Dickinson College. They're waiting for a college tour. Matt's sister goes to Dickinson because my sister went to Dickinson. Amy's mother was, alumni there, so she's legacy. It's the only school that they're both commonly applying to, and Matt convinces Amy to go there so they can mentor one another. They fall in love, they date, and then they deal with the adversity, and it's the ascension of Amy and the Greek tragedy trajectory of Matt Joya. And this is, meant to be an allegory for my life experiences, and I was hoping that the audience would, I would think of things that were the details. It's not an autobiography, so it's not, you know, like a one-to-one comparison of what happened. It's a fictitious adaptation. My life is not all that interesting, so I had events in the story that didn't happen in life, but the both the characters, or Matt particularly, his interests are, I share his interest, and this story was meant to elicit an emotional response that have individuals empathize with what I experienced at that time. If you can't empathize with that story, get out of the get out of the counseling profession. If you don't understand, you know, I have research from Saybrook that talks about, you know, being displaced from your social group, individuals who are grieving, and, you know, displacement from support groups. That's something that I experience. If you can't handle that, if you can't understand that, get out of the counseling profession. We got my student ID number. I shouldn't, you know, it seems like every school that I go to, there's issues with identity theft. I get emails. The students' social security numbers have been hacked. Right now, I have social security protection from my current school that I'm attending. Here's a situation where Cameron's disrobing for Amy to show Amy scars on her body. It's revealed, however, that there are no scars on Cameron's body. They're manifestations of Cameron's mind, because Cameron was emotionally abused by her father, not physically abused. And I've later, after I completed, you know, concepting the story, I thought to justify this, potentially, you know, it was one of these disclosure situations where she was disclosing that she was abused, but there, you know, there was a disbelief where individuals say that's not abuse. And in order to be abused, you have to have physical scars on your body or something. So over time, they materialized on her body. So I got kicked out of school for saying disrobe, and hey, you're the ones who are asking me, have you ever got lost in somebody? Do you lose yourself when in a relationship? How's your sex life? What's that like, you know? I feel like they crossed the boundary by asking me. It could just be, you know, reflect for your own records, reflect on, you know, have you ever, but you were asking for this information. You asked me to disclose this to you. So it's not unsolicited, it's not unwelcome, it's what you asked for. And you asked for the negative. You asked me to provide you negative. I felt I would need moral integrity and good bedside manner to be sensitive to patients' intimate details and their vulnerability as they may have to disrobe. You're telling me that you don't think I'm qualified to handle vulnerable populations? Are you even allowed to use that word? Are you sure that's an appropriate word for you to be using when you don't know what vulnerability means?
I like, say, how can we trust you? Because I trust you. I extended you trust. And what did you do with my trust? You betrayed me. You betrayed my trust. How can I trust you? You say that you're a humanistic school, yet you don't treat people with unconditional positive regard. You're not empathetic. Drake is telling everyone this story how he was in spiritual crisis. He's running outside feeling like his skin's on fire, where, he's throwing his shirt off or something. Drake, are you schizophrenic? Drake made me feel very uncomfortable when, we were engaged in a course, traumatic experience in relationships. And I was mentioning acquiring some information, and he was going on about like HIPAA and the ethics. And I don't think he fully understood the point I was trying to make, or he was losing something in translation. But then later on, I wrote a paper on Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. I'm very fond of this paper. It wasn't my best paper. But he's like, I had that thing that you wrote about, that Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. And I wasn't comfortable with the disclosure. It was some sort of mix of patronizing, condescending. Oh, that thing you just mentioned, I had it, or awkwardness, just awkwardness, because I don't really know you that well to be disclosing to me these things. Drake's mother died during that course, and I had called student services. I had mentioned like I need to make a request to this individual. Should I open up and extend my condolences, or should I just keep it professional? And should professors even disclose what I'm out of the office? You know, do they have to tell students, oh, so and so just died? Oh, my daughter's graduating. Oh, this, I am experiencing a medical crisis. How much do they have to disclose? As far as me, the police being, we're gonna have to go to the tapes here. Were the police in his area around that time?
I'm trying to stream all.
I am currently enrolled in a graduate program. Coursework from Seton Hall and Saybrook transferred in.